When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say, because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. I want to ask you something tonight, not a casual question, not the kind you can brush off with a quick laugh or a shrug. No, this one is heavier. It sticks to your ribs and sits in the pit of your stomach. If you were there, if you stood just a few steps away from a stranger being attacked, what would you do? I don't mean in theory. I mean in the raw, unflinching truth of the moment. No filters, no heroics written in hindsight. Would you run toward them? Would you shout? Would you fight? Or would you do nothing? It'll tell you what I did. But I should warn you, once you hear it, you might never be able to look at yourself or your phone the same way again. It was an ordinary night in New York City, the kind of night that hums in the background, a low electric current running through the veins of the city. The subway was nearly empty, the air inside the car thick with the smell of damp coats and the faint metallic tang of the rails. I remember the light above me flickering. Not dramatically, not like in the movies, just enough to remind me that even electricity can be uncertain. Across from me sat a man in a worn-out jacket, his head bowed, chin resting on his chest. I couldn't tell if he was asleep or simply tired in a way that went deeper than sleep could fix. To my left, a young woman with copper-colored hair stared into the middle distance, her headphones sealing her away from the world. The train rattled on, a long sigh through the underground. That's when I saw him, the man in the gray coat. He was standing near the doors, holding onto the pole with one hand. His other hand kept brushing at something invisible on his sleeve, like he was trying to erase a stain only he could see. He looked fragile, in a way. Not in body, he was tall enough, sturdy enough, but in presence. Like if you leaned on him too hard, he'd fold into himself. The shift happened fast. It always does. 1 second, we're all strangers bound together by nothing more than metal walls and a timetable. The next, the air is different. Sharp. The attacker, because that's what he became in an instant burst from the next car, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. His hood was up, shadow swallowing his face. I saw his arms swing before I even registered what was happening. The man in the gray coat staggered back, colliding with the door. His head snapped against the metal with a sound I can still hear if I close my eyes. And me, I didn't move. I like to tell you it was fear that pinned me to my seat, that I was calculating the safest way to intervene, that I was looking for an opening. But that's not the truth. The truth is uglier. My hand went straight into my pocket, not to call for help, not to grip the pepper spray I sometimes carry. No. I pulled out my phone, thumb to the screen, camera open, record. It's strange, isn't it, how instinct changes in this age we live in? Once upon a time, people reached for each other. Now, we reach for proof. Through the lens, I saw fists connecting, the gray coat crumpling, the hooded figure pressing forward. I saw a smear of red on the subway floor, like someone had spilled a bottle of wine and no one thought to clean it. And all the while, my own reflection hovered faintly over the glass of my screen, a ghost, holding a rectangle of light. Maybe you're thinking, why didn't anyone else do something? I wondered that too. The copper-haired girl turned her head away. The man in the worn-out jacket stayed folded into himself, maybe pretending to sleep, maybe praying to be invisible. We were all wrapped in the same cocoon of bystander stillness. My only difference was that I made it permanent. I pressed it into memory not for the man who was bleeding in front of me, but for a future I couldn't even imagine yet. It ended in silence. Not the kind of silence that comes with peace, but the kind that falls when something irreversible has just happened. The attacker fled at the next station. No one followed. The doors shut again, the train moving forward as if nothing had occurred. The man in the gray coat slid to the floor, his eyes God. Those eyes locked onto mine. They weren't pleading. They weren't even angry. They were asking. One question, clear and sharp, why, and I had no answer. I wish I could tell you I helped him up, that I pressed my jacket against his wound, that I stayed until the paramedics came. But I didn't. The doors opened at my stop, and I stepped off the train. My phone was still warm in my hand. When I reached the street, the cold air hit me like a slap. It should have woken me up. It didn't. By the time I got home, the video was already uploading. I didn't even remember pressing the button to share it. But there it was, a progress bar crawling forward, the little spinning icon promising my piece of the story to the world. The comments came fast. This is horrifying. Hope they catch the guy. Whoever filmed this is just as bad as the attacker. Thank you for documenting this. We need witnesses. Disgusting. You just stood there. I read them all. Some I agreed with. Some I hated. None of them changed the fact that, when it mattered most, I chose distance over action. You might think that was the end of it, that I lived with some guilt, maybe lost some sleep, and then life went on. But that's not how this story works, because the night didn't end. Not for me. I woke up or thought I did to the same sound of metal wheels grinding along the tracks, the same flickering light, the same damp smell in the air. I was still in the subway car. The man in the gray coat was still standing near the door. The copper-haired girl still stared into the middle distance. The man in the worn jacket still had his head bowed, and I was still holding my phone, camera open. Somewhere, deep inside, panic began to bloom, but my body didn't move. The air was charged again. The hooded figure would be coming through the next door in seconds. And just like before, I would do nothing but film. This is where you need to start paying attention, because this is the point where my life stopped moving forward, where time became a circle, and I became its prisoner. But that's for another chapter. I came to F, that's the right phrase in the hum of the rails. The smell was the same damp metal, worn upholstery, and something faintly electric. The light above me flickered again, not in a grand cinematic way, but like a tired heartbeat. For a moment, I thought it dreamed it all, the attack, the phone in my hand, the man's eyes asking why. But then I looked up, and the arrangement of faces told me the truth. They were all here. The man in the worn jacket, chin pressed into his chest. The young woman with copper hair, cocooned in her headphones. And near the door, the man in the gray coat, fingers rubbing at his sleeve as if erasing a stain no one else could see. It wasn't just familiar, it was exact. A photograph restaged down to the smallest detail. Have you ever felt a moment repeat itself? Not just déjà vu, but something more deliberate, as if the world itself had rewound you and pressed play again. That's what this was. The air was heavy with it. We weren't moving forward. We were looping. I tried to stand. My knees resisted like rusted hinges. The phone in my palm was a small weight, but it might as well have been a chain. I could feel the future pressing against the doors in the next Quran, invisible tension. The attack would happen again. I knew the sequence by heart, the shove, the blow, the red streak on the floor, and me, frozen, filming. But there was a pause, a sliver of time before it began. If I couldn't escape the loop, maybe I could alter something inside it, even a breath. I turned first to the man in the worn jacket. Up close, his hair curled damply at the neck, and his boots were scuffed in the same place as before. "Sir," I said quietly, "can you hear me?" His head didn't lift, but his hands tensed in his lap. Just for a moment. Was that a sign or just my need to believe I could still reach someone? Then I looked at the copper-haired woman. Her headphone cord was frayed near the plug, wrapped carefully in clear tape. That tiny repair made me ache people preserve what they care about. "Hey," I whispered, "if you can hear me, look at me." She didn't turn fully, but her chin shifted, just enough for our eyes to meet. Her lips moved without sound. 4 words: "Put the phone down." A shiver ran through me. My fingers tightened on the device as if by reflex. I wanted to obey, but my hand wouldn't unclench. The phone had become a shield, and setting it aside felt like stepping into a storm without cover. She held my gaze for a beat, then turned back to her window, and the message was gone. I moved toward the man in the gray coat. He hadn't been hurt yet. "Sir," I said, "listen to me. When we step off the train, go anywhere but here." His eyes flicked toward McGray with a hint of green, tired in a way sleep can't fix. But he didn't answer. His thumb kept stroking his sleeve like a clock counting down. The doors at the far end rattled. My body knew the sound, the hinge between one reality and another. I turned toward it just as the hooded figure stepped in, each stride like a pre-written line of a script. "Hey," I called out, louder than before. The copper-haired woman flinched. The attacker's head tilted in my direction, but his gaze landed not on my face, only on the phone. Then he turned back to his target. I wish I could tell you I leapt then, that I threw myself between them. But what I did was hesitate, fail a little slower than before, and in that hesitation, the man in the worn jacket lifted his head. His eyes found mine, searching for something: permission, courage, an answer. "Help me," I mouthed. He blinked once, hard. His hands shifted, unsure, then froze. The shove came. The gray coat hit the metal. My thumb pressed the record button. That old hallway in my mind, the one paved by 1,000 small choices to watch instead of act, pulled me down again. I won't describe the rest in detail. Not here. You know enough to imagine it without the sharp edges. The attacker fled when the doors opened. The copper-haired woman gripped her cord until the tape wrinkled. The man in the worn jacket stayed half standing, as if debating whether to commit, and I stayed. When the silence came, it felt grainy, like sand slipping through an unseen glass. The man in the gray coat looked at me, the same unspoken question etched in his eyes. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The train stopped at my station. Last time, I stepped out. This time, I didn't. The doors closed, and we moved on, deeper into the tunnel. I tried speaking again to all of them. To her, I said, "Your tape's holding." To him, "I think you tried." To the gray coat, "I'm sorry. I'm late." None of it was enough, but it was something. Maybe that's all I can do here and forward. If change is possible inside a loop, it will come in fragments: a flinch, a blink, a refusal to step off the train. It's not the redemption you want. It's not even the redemption I want, but it's all I have. The lights flickered. The car slowed for another stop. No one got on. No one got off. It was a station for ghosts. The copper-haired woman's mouth formed the words again. "Put the phone down." This time, I lowered it to my lap. Not away, but down. The car didn't reset. The scene kept going. And for a moment, that felt like progress. The man in the worn jacket spoke at last. A single awkward word. "Help!" He didn't move toward the gray coat. Neither did I. But the word lingered in the air between us. heavier than the silence. I know it sounds like nothing, but I promise to tell you this story exactly as it happened. And sometimes, in a place like this, nothing is the seed of something. You train the small fibers until they're strong enough to move the rest. We pulled away from the station. The tunnel swallowed us again. I breathed in, slow, through my nose, and said to the car, to the faces, to you, next time, sooner. I don't know if that's a vow or just a wish, but if you're still here, listening, I'll ask you, when your next ordinary moment begins to tilt towards something else, will you break the pattern, will you step in, or will you hold the phone? Do you know that sensation when time forgets to move, not slows, not hesitates? I mean truly forgets. When the breath you take in never leaves your lungs, when the blink you begin doesn't finish, when the air thickens into something that feels like wet glass, cold, still, unrelenting. That's where I am now. That's where I've been. In this frozen moment, it's not a metaphor. It's not a dream. It's a fracture in reality. A suspended beat between two notes of a song that no one wants to hear again. The subway car is the same. The man in the gray coat stands near the doors. His thumb still rubs that same imaginary stain on his sleeve. His posture is tight but unaware. He doesn't know what's coming. The copper-haired woman hasn't flinched yet. Her eyes remain locked on her reflection in the black window. The man in the worn jacket still pretends to sleep, though now I wonder if he ever truly was. And I am in mid-motion, phone in hand, arm half lifted, breath caught. Every time I think I've reached the bottom of this loop, the floor breaks beneath me, and I tumble deeper into stillness. The attacker hasn't arrived yet, but he will. He always does. It's not a question of if, but when. The doors at the end of the car will screech open, the hooded figure will step through, and the choreography will resume, as brutal and flawless as always. But something's different this time. I feel it, a pause inside the pause, a second layer of silence under the silence, like a whisper between walls. There's no sound, but I feel the suggestion of one, like a presence watching me from the corners where light doesn't reach. I turn my head slowly, carefully, but the figures in the car remain still, locked in their poses. And yet the copper-haired woman's lips twitch. Not a word, not even a breath, just a flicker. And for the first time, I realize she's seen me before, not just once, not just in the last loop. She knows me, or worse, she remembers. That breaks something inside me. If she remembers, if any of them do, then this isn't just my loop. This isn't just my punishment. This is a stage, and we're all trapped actors in a play that never ends, a theater without an audience. Unless you're the audience, you hearing this, watching from the outside, safe, comfortably nestled behind your screen, headphones in, sipping tea, lying in bed. You think this is just a story, but what if it isn't? What if this moment, this exact one, is reaching for you? What if the next time you freeze, the next time you reach for your phone instead of reaching for someone in need? This is where you'll wake up. Would you even notice a low vibration hums in my bones? It doesn't come from the tracks or the car. It comes from beneath all of it, like something ancient murmuring under the skin of the world, a frequency of judgment. I look at the man in the gray coat again. His face is peaceful in the way that only the unaware can be. But I know what's coming. I know how he falls, how his body crumples, how the metal kisses the back of his skull. I've seen it more times than I can count. But in this suspended moment, I do something I've never done before. I step forward. My hand still holding the phone reaches out. The space between us seems longer than it should be, like a hallway bending in dream logic. I stretch until my fingers almost graze his shoulder. Just a little more, but something stops me. Not fear, not hesitation. Not the air itself. Thick, resistant, like trying to push through water made of glass. It's not just psychological, it's real. Like this world, this loop is programmed. And I've reached the edge of what I'm allowed to do. I press forward anyway. The resistance deepens. My breath tightens. A sharp ache blooms in my chest, like I'm being pulled backward from the inside. And then a snap, a soundless fracture. Time shivers. The lights above me flicker again, but this time, they strobe violently, a harsh pulse, and suddenly, he is here, the attacker, the hooded figure, always silent, always brutal, steps into the car as if through a veil, but his movements are slower, distorted, like he's underwater. The whole world feels submerged. Sound is muffled. Motion is syrup. And I realize I've broken the loop. Not escaped it, but corrupted it. I moved when I wasn't supposed to. I reached when I wasn't ready. And the system doesn't like that. Everything around me begins to warp. The copper-haired woman's headphones unravel like threads pulled by invisible fingers. The man in the worn jacket lifts his head, but his face is wrong. His eyes are too wide, his mouth frozen mid-scream, but no sound comes. The subway car bends slightly, as though curving in on itself. And the man in the gray coat, he finally turns to look at me. Really look. His eyes aren't confused. They're knowing. Worst disappointed. Why didn't you stop it? His voice isn't spoke. It arrives in my mind like a truth I've always known. I tried. I whisper. I'm trying now. But the words feel empty. Because here I am, still holding the phone, still filming. You're still there, aren't you? You've heard everything so far. You followed me down into this loop. But I wonder, are you starting to see yourself in me? Even just a little. You don't have to admit it. Not out loud. But let me ask you this. When was the last time you acted too late? When was the last time you did nothing and called it staying safe? Do you ever wonder what that moment did to you? I didn't. Not until now. The world begins to rewind again. The lights surge. The air thins. The attacker fades backward, his body distorting, like film in reverse. The copper-haired woman returns to stillness. The man in the jacket bows his head again. The gray coat man turns away. And me, I find myself right back where I started. Hand lifted, phone glowing, mouth slightly open, no sound, no help, just frozen. And I understand now. This moment isn't frozen to me. I am frozen to it, and I won't leave until I learn to move again. Not out of fear, not out of shame, but out of something else. Something older, something human. Until then, I remain here, mid-motion, mid-guilt, mid-loop, waiting for the courage that should have come the first time, hoping that next time it will. Will yours. The train jerks forward. The lights above me stop flickering and settle into a steady, sterile white. We've reached that part. You know it now. Don't you, the moment when possibility shrinks into inevitability? Where the next second is no longer a question, but a fact. This is the beginning of the end. Every single time. They say trauma makes time blur. But what I've learned is that guilt sharpens it. Guilt makes every second ring like a bell in an empty cathedral. It freezes the frame. It etches the image. It plays the scene back with such merciless clarity that you begin to wonder if maybe you're the one replaying it because you deserve to. And maybe you do. The gray-coated man is still there. I see him from the side now, his profile carved in fluorescent light like a relief on a tomb wall. He hasn't heard it yet. The sound. The sound that always comes metal sliding open at the far end of the car. A breath. A footstep. Violence always arrives quietly at first. But me, I hear it before it happens. I feel it before it happens. It's like a second heartbeat under my own. A low-frequency tremor in my rib cage. A shift in the atmosphere. And that's when I know we've reached the moment when I should have done something. Not thought. Not filmed. Done. Do you remember the first time you witnessed cruelty? Not in a movie. Not in fiction. But in real life. Do you remember what you did, or more importantly, what you didn't? Because I do. It's branded into my bones. And here in this moment, it plays again with such perfection. I wonder if I'm the one directing it now. Like some twisted auteur of regret. The copper-haired woman starts to flinch. It's always this way subtle first. Her eyes shift like she's sensing something behind her, even though the noise hasn't reached yet. The man in the worn jacket twitches in his sleep, or pretends to. Maybe even he doesn't want to see it again. The man in gray lifts his hand to rub his temple. It's the last unknowing gesture hell ever make. And the doors at the back, they hiss, they sigh, and then they open. There he is. Again, the hooded figure. He always enters the same way, not fast, not loud, just certain. The certainty of someone who has never been stopped. Each step he takes collapses a possibility. Each motion rewrites the room. My hand tightens on the phone. Why? Why do I still hold it? Why does it feel fused to me, like a mechanical extension of my cowardice? It's just a device, a piece of metal and glass. And yet, in these moments, it becomes everything. A shield, a confession, a cage. The attacker crosses the threshold of the car. The copper-haired girl finally pulls out one earbud. The man in the jacket lifts his head. The gray-coated man turns halfway. He never sees it coming. The fist, the blow, the stumble, the crack of skull on steel. All of it is perfectly timed. And me, I don't scream. I don't move. I don't help. I film. Because that's what I did. That's what I always do. I want to tell you this time was different. That I threw the phone across the car. That I leapt between them. That I tackled the hooded man to the ground and saved a life. But that would be a lie. And haven't you had enough of those? This story isn't about heroism. Not yet. It's about something much smaller. And infinitely more painful. Awareness. I know now, with horrifying clarity, that this loop won't end just because I feel bad. It won't end because I want it to. It will only end when I do the one thing I've never done. The one thing I seem incapable of doing. Change. Not pretend, not imagine, but actually change. Not just intention, but movement, risk, sacrifice. And that terrifies me more than the loop. Because the loop, at least, is known, predictable, safe. The unknown, that's where real pain waits. The gray-coated man is on the ground now, his eyes open, searching. And even though this is the 100th time, maybe the 1,000th, they still find me. Always, without fail. And every time I see that look, I remember a truth I've tried so hard to forget. He could have lived, not in a movie, not in theory, but really actually, he could have lived. And I might have been the reason. Instead, I am the footage. The attacker vanishes at the next stop. He always does, like a shadow that learned how to walk. The copper-haired woman looks down. The man in the worn jacket rubs his eyes. And the doors open. It's my stop. It always is. But I don't get off. Not anymore. That part of the loop, at least, has changed. I stay because I know there's more. Because leaving doesn't mean freedom. Not in this story. You're still here. Aren't you still listening? Still watching? Good. Because this is the part where I stop pretending. I'm not just talking to fill silence. I'm not just telling this to confess. I'm telling it to ask you something. Something uncomfortable. Something you've avoided thinking about for a long time. When your moment comes, and I promise you, it will you act not after? Not once it's safe. Not when the camera is rolling, but in the moment. When your instincts scream at you to stay small, to stay distant, to stay silent. Will you be the stranger who helps or the stranger who films? Because I already know what I was, what I am still here, still holding the phone, but maybe tomorrow, maybe on the next loop will lower it, maybe he'll move, maybe he'll stop choosing safety over humanity. Maybe he'll earn the right to leave this moment behind. Maybe, and maybe, just maybe you won't have to live this loop to learn the same thing. It was morning, or at least, it was trying to be. I don't remember leaving the subway. I don't remember my legs moving or the turnstile clicking or the steps leading up into the light. But somehow, I was home, in my apartment, shoes still on, jacket half zipped, the phone still warm in my hand, like it had been dreaming too. I sat there on the edge of the bed, the city's early static buzzing beyond the windows, distant horns, the cough of engines, the rhythmic bark of a dog too eager to start the day. Life outside didn't seem to notice what had happened underground. Or maybe it didn't care. The screen of my phone was still glowing, still open to the last frame I had recorded. The gray coat, lying still, the hooded figure, disappearing into the tunnel's mouth, the bystanders frozen in shame, and me reflected faintly in the glass, holding the camera like a confession. I should have deleted it. I should have, but I didn't. You know how it goes from here. It only takes one swipe, one click, one moment of weakness, curiosity, or justification. I uploaded the video. I don't even remember doing it. My thumbs moved like they'd been trained for it, like they were obeying a deeper command than conscience. Maybe I told myself it was for justice, that the footage would help identify the attacker, that it would alert the public, that it had purpose. But deep down, I know better. There was something else I wanted, a smaller, darker thing. I wanted to be seen. Within hours, it was viral. Not just a few hundred views or shares. I'm talking millions. Platforms I never used started tagging me. Messages poured in. Some of them were kind, supportive. Even, "Thank you for recording this. Hope that man's okay. You did what you could. It's dangerous out there." But most weren't. You just stood there. You cowered. You watched him die. You're as guilty as the one who hit him. Delete yourself. I read every one, every comment, every repost, every thread dissecting my inaction like I was a case study, a warning, a meme. My face wasn't in the video, but people found me anyway. They always do. They found the blur of my reflection in the train window, matched it to other footage, found my social accounts, my name, my job. Suddenly, I wasn't the observer anymore. I was the observed. I stopped leaving the apartment, not because I was afraid of being recognized, but because I started seeing the subway everywhere. In my bathroom mirror, in the hallway at night, in the pauses between songs. It was like the train had followed me, or maybe I never really left it. The loop wasn't just underground anymore. Now it was in me. Every night, I woke gasping, drenched in sweat, back in that moment, the phone in my hand. The scream in my ears, the question in his eyes. Even in waking hours, I couldn't escape. He'd blink, and the copper-haired woman was sitting across from me in the caf, her headphones frayed and her stare bottomless. He'd walk past a store window and see the man in the worn jacket inside, asleep on a bench that wasn't there. And always, always the gray coat, falling, falling. Like the universe had decided that moment was the only one that mattered, the only one I deserved. You'd think he'd learn something from it. Wouldn't you, that the guilt would push me to act differently, to reach out, to stop being passive? But it didn't, not at first. Because guilt doesn't always make you better. Sometimes it just makes you smaller. It shrinks you into yourself until the only thing you can feel is your own failure. And when that happens, you become the loop. You become the video. You become the moment that refuses to end. I tried deleting the footage. I tried wiping my accounts. I tried smashing the phone. I tried rituals I found online. Unplug everything. Burn the image. Speak the name out loud. Nothing worked. The video always came back. Somewhere. Re-uploaded. Reposted. Remixed. It didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to everyone. And that's when it hit me. This was bigger than me. This wasn't just my guilt. This was ours, a collective sickness. A society that watches pain through glass and calls it awareness. That scrolls past suffering and calls it fatigue. That films instead of acts and calls it proof. We all do it. We all hold the phone. But the difference is, most of you get to walk away. You watch the video. You feel a flare of outrage. You share. You comment. And then you swipe up. You move on. I don't. I'm still here. Trapped between the scream and the silence. Between the blow and the blood. Between the record button and the stillness that follows. The train never stops. And the most terrifying part, I think some part of me doesn't want it to. Because as long as I'm trapped here, I don't have to face what comes after. I don't have to rebuild. I don't have to make it right. I just get to punish myself. And that's easier. Isn't it easier than making peace? Easier than stepping off the train? But if I ever want to escape this, if I ever want to stop being the stranger who filmed, then I have to do something harder than any of that. I have to forgive myself. Are you still with me? Still listening? Then I want to ask you something. Something raw. Something real. Have you ever filmed when you should have acted? Have you ever watched instead of helped? Have you ever clicked share and called it empathy? Be honest. With yourself, because that's where the loop begins. And where, maybe, it ends. Not in the moment of tragedy, but in the quiet after, when no one's watching, and you choose who you'll be next time. I don't know if I'm ready yet, but I'm closer, closer than I was. Tomorrow, I'll wake again. I'll hear the hiss of the train. The lights will flicker. The door will open, and the moment will return. But maybe, just maybe, this time I won't lift the phone. Night doesn't end here. Not the way it should. The sun rises. Sure, technically. A sliver of light crawls across my window pane. The clock ticks forward. The city rouses itself with sirens and coffee and urgency. But inside me it's still night. The kind that lingers behind your eyelids. The kind you carry. The kind that moves in with you. Have you ever lived through a night so long it changed your definition of morning? My apartment has become a museum of stillness. Clocks tick, lights switch on, but nothing moves. I've stopped touching things, stopped eating meals at the table, stopped answering messages. Even time in here seems to orbit me instead of carrying me with it. The only thing that breaks the quiet is the phone. It buzzes, it glows, it demands. People still comment. Still share, still judge. The clip continues to circulate faster, broader, stranger. It's been remixed, edited, dubbed with music. They've made memes of it now. My silence, my stillness. The look in the gray-coated man's eyes reduced to a caption, and yet I watch it. I watch it again and again, every time, hoping for something different, a twitch, a new detail, a mistake in the loop. But it never changes. He falls. I freeze. Everyone else looks away, and the world moves on without him. One night, I don't know what time, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, I try something new. I close the laptop. I turn the phone off completely. I sit in the center of the apartment with no light, no screen, no witness, and I speak out loud. To the room, to myself, to him. I didn't mean for it to happen. I whisper. I didn't know what to do. The words float there, empty, like breath trapped in a bottle. But I keep talking. I was scared. I thought if I had proof, someone smarter, stronger, braver than me would come, would fix it, would make it right. Silence answers. You looked at me like I was supposed to do something, and maybe I was, but I didn't. I didn't. I press my fist to my eyes until I see sparks, until I stop seeing him. I fall asleep on the floor. When I wake up, I'm back on the train. No warning, no transition, no logic. Just there, same car, same seats, same gray coat, same orbiting strangers. Except this time something's off. Not the layout, not the lighting, the silence. It's deeper, thicker, like the car itself is holding its breath. I look around. The man in the gray coat is still standing, but he's looking directly at me. Not past me, not through me, at me, and there's no confusion in his eyes. Only recognition. It's the first time I've seen that. I open my mouth to speak, but no sound comes out. Not like a dream. Worse, like the air between us has hardened into glass. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak, but I feel the message in his stare. You've had enough time. I turn to the copper-haired woman. She's not wearing her headphones. I hadn't noticed at first because I'd grown so used to her being frozen in that state. But now, her hands are in her lap, her eyes closed, as if waiting or mourning. The man in the worn jacket has stood up. That's new, too. He's facing the doors, posture rigid. His head turns slightly toward me, just enough to acknowledge we're in this together now. No one speaks, but something has changed. This night has changed. A pressure builds, not in the train, in me, a quiet panic, like the space between heartbeats is growing longer. Like the loop is no longer passive, it's aware. Not punishment, judgment. The attacker hasn't arrived yet, but I feel him coming. I don't mean I hear the footsteps or the door. I mean I feel him the way a deer feels the snap of a twig behind it. Instinct, certainty. It's time. My hands begin to tremble, but I'm not holding the phone this time. That's the first change. The phone is in my pocket, sleeping, silent. My fingers are open, empty, but so is the moment. And empty hands can't shield me anymore. Empty hands mean I have to act. I try to speak again, to warn them, to scream, but the sound won't rise. It stays lodged in my chest like a swallowed truth. And that's when the doors hiss. They always do, but this time the sound is unbearable, like metal screaming through bone. And the attacker, he steps through. But he's changed, too. He no longer has a face. It's blurred, like someone censored it mid-motion, a smudge of shadow and static. And when he turns toward the gray coat, so do I. But this time I run. My feet move. Fast, desperate, clumsy, and the moment stretches. The attacker raises his arm, but I reach first. I shove the man in the gray coat aside. He stumbles, not into metal, into me. We both fall, together. The attacker hesitates, just for a second, and the second is enough. The copper-haired woman stands. So does the man in the jacket. We all face him. As one, he doesn't run. He simply vanishes. Like the violence only existed if no one moved. No one tried. No one cared. I lie on the floor, chest heaving. The gray coat's weight on my shoulder. We look at each other, and for the first time, he smiles. Just a little, not with joy, but with relief. And in that instant, the train halts, not slows. Halts. The lights go dark. Then nothing. I wake in my bed again. But this time, it's morning. Real morning. Sunlight pours through the window. The phone is still off. The air is lighter. And I feel different. Not redeemed. Not forgiven. But awake. Like I've broken through the last wall of the night. Like I'm no longer stuck in the freeze frame of my own shame. The video's still out there. Still viral. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because I'm not watching it. I'm here. Alive. Breathing. Ready. Are you? Because that's the only reason I'm telling you all this. Not for views. Not for pity. But for that one question. Are you still stuck in the loop because it doesn't take a train car, or a camera, or a viral video? Sometimes all it takes is silence. The moment when you could have done something, but didn't. So the next time it happens, and it will happen, be the first to move. Please. You think that was the end of it? That a single act of movement shoving the man in the gray coat out of harm's way, standing up to the faceless figure, breathing through the darkness would break the cycle. But cycles don't break easily. Not when they're etched into the marrow of who you are. Not when they're watched. Because I've started to feel them now. The watchers. I'm not talking about the people online. The ones who shared the clip, dissected it, ridiculed me, defended me, cursed me. They were just a chorus loud but fleeting. I'm talking about something else. Older, quieter, more patient. It started a few days, if time means anything, after I woke up. After I thought I had broken free. I was walking down 8th Avenue. Cold wind pressing against my face. Hands in pockets. Eyes forward. Trying to feel normal. And I felt it. That pull. Like being stared at from behind a pane of dark glass. Like a mirror watching you before you look into it. At first I told myself it was just paranoia. Residual anxiety. Leftovers from guilt. But then I noticed the patterns. The man across from me on the subway. Same gray coat, but never the same face. And yet always looking at me just a second too long. The woman in the caf, sipping from a chipped mug. Copper strands of hair slipping from under her beanie. No headphones. Just eyes fixed. The man sleeping on the park bench. Same posture, same boots. Same stillness that didn't quite feel like sleep. They were everywhere. Echoes of the train, but rearranged, reused. Like props from a play reappearing in a different scene. You might ask, am I hallucinating? I've asked myself the same thing. But what if I'm not? What if those of us who fail publicly get followed not by fame, not by fans, but by witnesses, watchers, sentinels of inaction? Guardians of guilt. archivists of what we chose not to do. They don't speak. They don't move toward me. They don't ask questions. They simply observe from street corners, from windows, from shadows beneath flickering lights. And the strangest thing is, they don't judge. Their eyes hold no contempt, no fury, just expectation, as if waiting, as if I haven't proven myself yet, as if I'm still being measured. I started testing them. I'd stop mid-step, turn sharply, call out. They would vanish, not suddenly, not like ghosts, but like people slipping behind the curtain of the world. And that terrified me more, because it meant they were real, or at least real enough. Last night, I found one closer than ever. I was home, lights dim, a pot of water simmering on the stove. I turned around, and there, through the window of the fire escape, a figure stood, not moving, not hiding, watching, gray coat, copper hair, folded hands. It wasn't exactly them. But it was close enough that my breath caught in my chest. I moved toward the window slowly, the way you approach a wild animal. And when I reached the glass, the figure lifted one hand and pointed downward. At first, I thought it was a warning, a threat, but it wasn't. It was direction. Look down. So I did. Beneath my apartment window, on the sidewalk below, a man was collapsed, face down, unmoving. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and ran. Down the stairs, past the mailboxes, into the cold, and he was still there. A stranger, mid-30s, eyes fluttering, breath shallow. I knelt, checked his pulse. People walked by, glanced, hesitated, but no one stopped. Not until I yelled, loud, authoritative. Call 911. Now someone did. Others gathered. A circle formed. But for once, I wasn't filming. I wasn't frozen. I was acting. The paramedics arrived, took him away, said it might have been a seizure, or low blood sugar, or just exhaustion. But he was alive, and when they asked me for my name, I gave it. No shame, no fear, just truth. When I got back to my apartment, the figure was gone from the fire escape, but something was waiting on my desk. My phone, screen on, unlocked, and open to a new video. One I hadn't filmed, one I hadn't seen, until now. It was me, on the train, frozen, the moment I first chose to record instead of help. But this time the angle was different, not from my hand, from above, from outside, as if something had been watching me all along. I dropped the phone, backed away, heart pounding, because I knew what it meant. They've been watching the whole time. The watchers aren't a hallucination. They're the keepers of guilt, of consequence, of truth. They follow those who falter, not to punish, but to witness, to make sure we remember. You're listening now, still here. So let me tell you something that might keep you up tonight. There may be watchers around you, too, already, right now, in the parking lot, on the escalator, across the caf. They're not waiting for you to fail. They're waiting to see if you'll change, if you'll do better, if you'll move. And when the moment comes when someone stumbles in front of you, when cruelty unfolds 3 feet away, when silence screams louder than words, will you do what I didn't? Or will you become just another loop in someone else's nightmare? There's a difference between being watched and being addressed. One is passive, distant, a gaze in the dark. The other, it's intimate. It knows your name, and it knows exactly what you're afraid to admit. This chapter begins the moment the silence speaks. It happened after 3 nights of stillness. I had stopped checking my phone, stopped answering messages, Stopped engaging with the clip that the world still spun around like a piece of orbiting debris. I kept the windows shut, the curtains drawn, lights dimmed. If the watchers were still out there, I gave them nothing new to see. No movement, no action, no mistakes. And for a while, I convinced myself that meant safety. But guilt doesn't need eyes, and it doesn't need light. Sometimes it just needs a voice. It was 3:21 a.m. when it began. I remember the time exactly, because I had just glanced at the clock, desperate to measure how many hours I hadn't slept. The apartment was quiet, not peaceful dead, the kind of silence that creeps under doors and lives in your lungs. And then a whisper, right behind my ear, low, steady, male, but faceless, like a voice from inside the walls. I didn't catch what it said at first, just sound, like breath formed into syllables too dense to decipher. I spun around nothing. I stood, checked the apartment, room by room. Nothing, except for that cold prickle on the back of my neck, like someone had just stepped out of the room before I entered. I sat back down, tried to steady myself, and then I heard it again, clearer, not loud, not aggressive, but precise. A voice like a blade wrapped in velvet. You always freeze before the moment. I stopped breathing. Not by choice, but because my body didn't know how to respond to being called out by name without being called by name. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. There was no body in the room, no visible mouth, no speaker. The voice wasn't in the air. It was in me, or beneath me, inside the floorboards, inside the loop. It wasn't speaking to my ears. It was speaking to my pattern. You always prepare too late, it said next, and it was right. That was my crime. Not malice, not hatred, delay, a second too long, a breath too deep, a question too internal. I never acted in the moment. I waited for safety, for proof, for someone else to move first. But no one ever does. Not in the real world. Not in the car. Not in this hell. I tried to reply, tried to form words, even just in my head. Who are you? What do you want? How do I stop this? But every sentence cracked under the weight of itself. The voice didn't wait for permission. It simply continued. Do you remember the second scream I blinked? What the second scream, the one you never heard, and suddenly I knew what it meant. In the original moment, the one burned into the world, I had recorded the first cry, the first hit, the first gasp, but had never played the clip long enough to hear what came after. He never stayed long enough to face it. I turned my phone on, hands trembling, chest tight. The screen lit up like a wound reopening. I searched the video the one had filmed, the one had tried to forget, and I let it play. All the way. No edits. No escape. I watched the blow. The collapse. The blood. I watched myself, faint reflection frozen. And then there it was. A second scream. Not from the man in the gray coat. From someone else. A voice I'd never noticed. Off camera. Sharp. Urgent. Desperate. Do something. I dropped the phone. Because it wasn't just a voice. It was mine. My own voice. From the past. From some forgotten instinct. A raw, unfiltered command before shame crushed it. Before habits silenced it. Before cowardice took the wheel. In that split second, I had tried. Had felt the urge. Had wanted to move. But I didn't. And because I didn't, that part of me, the voice, was left behind. Abandoned. Like a ghost that never got to finish its sentence. That's what the watchers are. Not demons. Not ghosts. Not metaphors. They're the fragments of ourselves we leave behind when we choose silence over action. They are our unspoken words, our unfired signals, our broken instincts. And now they whisper until we hear them. That night, I didn't sleep, didn't move. I sat and listened to the voice, to myself, and it kept whispering, "You could have, you could have, you could have," until it became a rhythm, a mantra, a sentence, a curse. Are you still listening? Because I want you to think about something brutal and honest. What part of you have you left behind? What version of yourself screamed out for courage just before you turned away? What voice inside you still whispers when you try to sleep? If you can hear it even now, you haven't escaped your loop. Not yet, but you can. And when the moment returns, and it will, you'll hear that voice again. And this time, maybe you'll listen. They say trauma echoes. I used to think that meant it repeated in your mind, flashbacks, memories, whispers that curl around your thoughts when you're most vulnerable. But I've come to understand something far more unsettling. Some echoes are not in your head. Some echoes are external, alive. Shadows of the original moment bouncing back not from your memory, but from reality itself, warped, delayed, but unmistakably present. This is the echo train, and I've been riding it for days. It started when I stepped onto a subway that wasn't mine, not in the usual sense. It looked like a regular New York train, chipped paint, flickering lights, the occasional ad for weight loss or law firms. People slouched in their seats, stared into their phones, ignored one another with practiced grace. But something was off. The posters were blank, not torn or vandalized, just empty. White rectangles where words should be. And the people, they were quiet, too quiet. No music leaking from earbuds, no soft chatter, no coughs, no throat clearing, just silence, heavy, like the whole train was holding its breath. I tried to shake it off. Just another dream. I thought, another loop in my personal punishment spiral. But then I saw the door, the same door at the far end of the car, the one he always entered through, the hooded figure, except this time there were two of them, identical, mirrored, perfect symmetry, standing still, facing each other, not moving, not attacking, just waiting. I stood up, slowly, and looked around. No one reacted, no one blinked, and then I heard it. Not speech, not footsteps, voices, dozens of them, faint, layered over each other like soundtracks misaligned. They weren't speaking to each other. They weren't even speaking in sync. They were echoes, familiar, too familiar. I walked down the car, one slow step after another. As I moved, the voices grew louder. Help him, do something. Don't just stand there. Why are you filming? Some were angry. Some were desperate. Some sounded like mine, but older, tired, worn thin by repetition. And then it hit me, this was my memory. It was everyone's. Everyone who had ever frozen in the moment. Everyone who had ever stood by. Their regrets had pooled together in this place, this train, this loop, this echo, and now we were riding it together. I reached the middle of the car. The two hooded figures still stood facing one another, but between them now a mirror, not on the wall, not hung or framed, just suspended, floating, shimmering, and in it, I saw myself, not just me now, every version of me, the man who filmed, the one who screamed, the one who ran, the one who stood up too late, the one who never stood at all. They flickered like an old reel of film, one frame over another, each slightly misaligned. I stepped closer. The mirror shimmered again. This time, the reflection showed me on the platform, watching a woman get harassed and walking away, a memory I had buried. Then another A child being bullied on the street. I crossed to the other side and told myself it wasn't my problem. Then another an old man, collapsed at a bus stop. I hesitated. Someone else called for help first. I walked on, each reflection a failure. Not epic, not violent, just ordinary. Ordinary cruelty, the kind that hides behind convenience, behind silence, behind busyness. And each time, I whispered the same thing to myself I didn't mean to. But the echoes didn't care. They kept speaking. And now, they weren't just voices. They were people, figures standing in the seats of the train, not passengers, witnesses, versions of me, versions of you. All the people who watched instead of helped. All the people who filmed instead of stopped. All the people who looked away. We filled the train now, and still, it was silent, because silence is our native tongue. I backed away from the mirror. The hooded figures turned toward me, and in unison, they said, "Are you ready?" My mouth was dry. I didn't ask. For what? Because deep down, I already knew. I nodded, and the train began to split. Not physically, but symbolically. The walls bent outward, the lights dimmed, the figures dissolved, and I was standing in two places at once. One car held the familiar loop, the collapse, the filming, the failure. The other was blank, unwritten, unknown, a train that hadn't run yet, but could if I stepped into it. And that's where I am now, standing between what was and what could be, one foot in regret, one in redemption. But the choice is mine. It always was. Are you listening? Not just with your ears, but with your choices, because the Echo train isn't just my ride. It's yours too. It visits you every day, at the crosswalk, in the hallway, on the feed, in every moment where a stranger needs help and your fingers twitch toward your phone instead of their hand. The echoes are gathering, watching, waiting. And when your reflection appears in the mirror, who will you be, the one who acted or the one who replayed it? Over and over, from a safe distance. It started with the sound, a crack sharp, jagged, like old vinyl catching a splinter. Not from the speakers, not from the air, from reality itself, like the loop was breaking, or maybe glitching. I had returned to the subway again, not because I wanted to, because I had to. The train always calls you back eventually. But this time, something was wrong. Wrong in a new way. Not just the watchers, not just the mirrored versions of me, not just the voice in the dark. This was deeper, more dangerous, more invasive. Reality itself had stopped trusting its own structure. The floor beneath my feet shuddered, not like a train rumble, like a heartbeat skipping a beat. I looked around. The seats blinked in and out of form. The posters flickered one moment blank, the next filled with words I couldn't read, then gone again. Even the people weren't consistent anymore. The man in the worn jacket kept changing. One moment, it was him. Then it was a girl from my high school. Then it was my father, same seat, same slouch posture, different faces. Like the loop couldn't remember who was supposed to play the parts. I stood, unsteady. The copper-haired woman sat nearby, except now her face was pixelated, glitching like a corrupted file. Her mouth opened and closed in reverse. A tear streamed upward instead of down. She looked at me and mouthed something I couldn't read. Not because the words weren't clear, but because the language wasn't real anymore. I ran, down the aisle, through the next car, and the next. Doors opened without me touching them. Lights blinked like strobe lights in a fever dream. And in every car I passed, there I was. Versions of me, sitting, standing, kneeling by the man in the gray coat, holding my phone, throwing it, sobbing, laughing, glitched copies, all frozen in different poses of guilt. It wasn't just a loop anymore. It was a fractal. My failure was spreading, splitting, duplicating itself across dimensions. I collapsed against a pole, breathing fast, heart hammering, and that's when the train stopped, slammed to a halt without warning, without brakes, without physics, just stopped. And the doors at the far end hissed open, but no attacker entered. This time I did. Yes, a version of me, from another car, another loop. He stepped through the doors slowly, deliberately, and looked straight at me. Same clothes, same hair, same face, but different eyes. His were colder, sharper, like glass that had been stepped on and reassembled. He tilted his head, smirked, spoke without speaking. You made this. I backed away. He followed. His movements didn't sync with mine. He glitched forward in short burst frames, skipping, like a corrupted VHS of my own soul. Stop, I said out loud. But he didn't. He couldn't. He was written, hard-coded into the consequence of my delay. I reached for the emergency brake, but it wasn't there. There was nothing on the walls, just white space, like reality hadn't finished rendering. Then he lunged, not to hit, not to kill, to merge. Our bodies collided, but there was no pain, only memory, rushing, flooding. Every moment I failed, every time I paused, every second I told myself, it's not my job. Someone else will help. I shouldn't interfere. I felt each one, like needles in my spine, like film being rewound through my bones. And then he was gone. I stood alone again, but heavier, haunted from the inside. The train lights dimmed, and a screen lowered from the ceiling, like a classroom projector in a world that should never have had one. It began to play me. Every instance, every version, looping, failing, trying, crying, stopping, freezing, a mosaic of inaction. Thousands of me, each more distorted than the last, faces melted, hands pixelated, eyes covered with static. The longer I watched, the less I recognized myself. And that's when I realized the glitch wasn't the train, it wasn't the others, it wasn't the watchers, it was me. I was the broken code, the corrupted file, the unresolved function. The loop was trying to eject me, to crash, to collapse, because I refused to complete. I had refused to choose, to act or to vanish. And now the system was breaking apart under the weight of my indecision. So I stood up and I screamed. Not words, not pleas, just sound. The sound I should have made in the first loop, the one I had always swallowed. It echoed through the car, rattled the glass, shattered the screen. The projector dissolved. The seats blinked out. The copper-haired woman pixelated and vanished. The train walls peeled away like paper, and I was falling. Not through space, through possibility. Endless versions of the moment spiraled around me, each one a different ending, each one an answer I never gave. And then silence, a deep, holy silence, like the universe holding its breath. I stood on a blank platform, no sign, no trains, no noise, just me, and a question, written in the air like smoke. What will you do next time? Because that's what it always comes down to. Doesn't it? Not the past, not the punishment, not the glitch, but the next time, the next scream, the next fall, The next moment where action costs you everything and inaction costs someone else more. That's your test, and it's coming. For you, for all of us. The system is watching, the watchers are recording, and the train is still running. Do you know what the internet does with tragedy? It sorts it, labels it, packages it, and then feeds it to you, piece by piece, like a morbid machine learning to imitate empathy. That's what I see now, the algorithm. Not just code, not just buttons and feeds and timelines. No, the algorithm is alive, and it does not care, because it was built not to care. It rewards attention, not action. It promotes spectacle, not sacrifice. And the moment I uploaded that video, that one moment of me holding the phone instead of helping, I became part of its design. I didn't know it at the time. Of course I didn't. I thought I was just one man, frozen in 1 second, with one small device. But the moment that video went live, I became more than a bystander. I became content. Have you ever watched yourself become a symbol, not in a heroic way, not in the way statues are made or names are remembered? I mean in the way memes are made, in the way people screen capture your face mid-regret, slap a joke on it, and press share. You're not you anymore. You're that guy, the guy with the phone, stranger who filmed. You're not a person. You're a placeholder, an icon for everything wrong with everyone else. But here's the catch: that icon spreads. And with every share, the algorithm learns. It learns that tragedy gets clicks, that silence gets retweets, that guilt loops better than justice ever could. And so it builds you a stage, somewhere in the glitch after the mirror fractured, after the other version of me tried to merge. After I screamed the scream I should have screamed, I found myself in a place I can only describe as curated silence. Not a subway, not a street, not a room, a hallway, endless, dark, lined with screens, each one playing a clip. Not just my clip, but thousands like it. Hundreds of strangers holding phones, some at protests, some at accidents, some during violence, some during death, some who stepped in, but most who didn't. And above each screen, a number, view count, likes, shares, engagement score. It was a gallery of apathy monetized. I walked for what felt like hours. Each screen flickered as I passed, as if recognizing me, as if we were all just different limbs of the same body, the collective observer, the ones who never moved, but always watched. And then I saw it, a screen playing my own face. Not the original video, not even the reflection, but the moment after, the moment I uploaded it, that quiet second in my apartment, when my finger hesitated, hovered, and finally tapped share. I had told myself I barely remembered that part, but the screen didn't lie. My face was calm, too calm, not horrified, not angry, just distant, like I had already handed over the responsibility. Let the algorithm decide what to do with it. Let the machine think for me. And above that screen, not just a number, a message: high retention, strong engagement. Recommended for similar viewers. I felt sick, not because it was wrong, but because it was true. The system had learned me, fed me, and then fed on me. Not as punishment, as reward, because I gave it what it needed: passive spectacle. A loop people couldn't stop watching. The hallway ended in a room, circular, empty, one chair in the middle, one more screen, black, waiting. I sat because I knew what was coming. I didn't resist. The screen turned on. This time, no video, just text, white on black. We are not punishing you. We are reflecting you. Then, you are what we recommend. I began to cry, silently, dryly. Not because I hadn't heard the words before, but because I had said them myself so many times, in 1,000 comments, in conversations, in defense of my own inaction. It's not my fault. I didn't cause it. I was just recording, but every algorithm needs fuel, and I had fed it without protest, without pause. I was the perfect user, silent, scared, trigger happy, desperate for attention and absolution, but unwilling to pay for either with action. And now I was trapped in the feedback loop I had helped build. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, in the dark, when no one's watching. When was the last time you clicked share on something painful without ever asking if you helped? When was the last time you retweeted injustice before you asked yourself whether you could interrupt it? When was the last time you treated someone's final moments as a teaching tool for your feed, a spectacle for your story? We all do it. We all tell ourselves it's activism, it's awareness. But awareness without action is just decoration. And the algorithm knows that. It doesn't care what you feel, only what you feed. In that room, as the screen faded to black, a final message burned into my eyes. If you won't break the loop, we will loop you. The lights snapped off, the door opened, and I was back on the train. But this time, no passengers, no voices, no attacker, no gray coat, just me. And the phone, glowing in my palm, a new notification blinking softly. Your video is trending again. I stared at it, and I understood something I hadn't before. The train wasn't hell. It was home, built for me, by me, fed by the world I helped create. And now the only way out was through a different feed. Are you still listening? Then hear me, really hear me. You are not exempt from this system. You don't have to be holding the phone to be holding the rope. Every loop needs watchers. Every loop needs silence. And if you're silent, if you're only watching, then you're part of the algorithm too. Not a victim of it, a node in it. So the next time you scroll past a tragedy, the next time you film instead of move, ask yourself, are you sharing pain or are you perpetuating it? Because this system isn't coded in Python or JavaScript. It's coded in us. I used to think I was alone, that the loop was mine, that the watchers, the voices, the mirror reflections, they were just echoes of my failure, my guilt, my paralysis. But I was wrong. There are others. I've started to see them now, not in videos, not in comment sections, but in the cracks, the places where the loop stutters, where time doesn't quite align, where shame doesn't thicken the air like smoke. There, in those fractures, I see the ones who moved. It began with a woman on the platform, not someone I recognized, no copper hair, no mirrored eyes, just a presence, still but aware, while the rest of the commuters kept their heads bowed, scrolling, nodding off, dissolving into the gray. She stood tall, no phone in her hand, just open palms, like she was ready. And for a moment, our eyes met. She didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't flinch. But something passed between us, a current, like static before lightning. She turned and walked away. And the air cleared, not completely, not for long, but for the first time in what felt like forever. I took a breath that didn't taste like punishment. That was the first crack. Then came the others. I began to notice subtle disruptions in the loop, flickers in the pattern. A man on the train reaching for the attacker before the blow landed. A woman shouting across the aisle. Not here. Not now. Not again. Children huddled together, whispering something like a prayer, but braver. A stranger standing, not hesitating. Each one different, Each one brief, each one impossible. Because I knew the loop by heart. I had watched it more times than I can count. And this wasn't how it went. These were new scenes, unscripted, unafraid. I started calling them the moved. Not heroes, not saints, not perfect. Just human beings who chose friction over flow, who stood when sitting was safer, who acted in a system designed to reward inaction, and their presence changed everything. The watchers, they noticed too. They turned their gaze from me, tilted their heads toward these anomalies. Curious, not hostile, not disappointed, almost hopeful. One day, I followed one. He was young, late 20s, faint scar on his chin. He boarded the train just before midnight. I recognized him immediately, not because I knew him, but because he moved like someone who wasn't afraid of the moment. His body was tuned for intervention. Every step said, I will not let this happen again. I sat across from him, waited for the doors, waited for the pattern, waited for the loop to bite back. But when the attacker entered, this man stood. No hesitation, no calculation, just motion. His hand reached out not for a phone, but for the attacker's wrist. Stopped it mid-strike. No fight, just pressure, control. The attacker glitched, flickered, faded. Like he didn't know how to exist in a world where someone moved too early. The man looked at me, only once, but it was enough. In his eyes, I saw something that silenced the loop entirely. Compassion without judgment. He wasn't there to shame me. He wasn't better, just braver that time. And that was all it took. After that, I started seeing more of them. Not often, not predictably, but they were there hidden in the folds of reality, interrupting the machine. They weren't celebrated, weren't viral, weren't rewarded. But the algorithm didn't know what to do with them. They weren't repeatable, weren't profitable, weren't loopable. So it buried them, quietly, systematically. It couldn't erase them, but it could ignore them. And in a world built on attention, to ignore is to erase. But I remembered, each one, every flicker of courage, every footstep into danger, every hand offered instead of a lens. And slowly, those images started to anchor me. They gave the loop gravity, a center, not just guilt, but possibility. Let me tell you a secret. The system doesn't fear failure. It feeds on failure. What it fears is redemption. Because redemption doesn't scale. It doesn't sell. It doesn't loop cleanly. Redemption is messy, unpredictable, human. And once enough people remember how to be human, the system breaks. Not with a bang, but with a soft, collective whisper. Not this time. Are you still listening? I hope so. Because this part is for you. You don't have to be a hero. You don't have to have the perfect words, the perfect timing, the perfect body. You just have to move. That's all. When the loop begins again, and it will, because it always does, you'll feel it. That pressure, that split-second decision. Will you lift your phone or will you lift your voice? Your hands, your body, will you interrupt the algorithm? Even if no one notices, even if it's not viral, even if it's not clean or cinematic, even if you're scared, especially if you're scared, because the moved, they aren't fearless. They just refuse to let fear be the last vote. I'm still in the loop, still riding, still learning. But the train is different now. The lights don't flicker as much. The walls don't bend. The watchers have turned inward. And sometimes, in the corner of my vision, I catch a glimpse of someone new, someone standing, ready, and I know I'm not alone anymore. None of us are. Not if we choose to move. There's a question I've been avoiding, not because I didn't know it was there, but because once you ask it, you can't unask it. And worse, once you answer, you can't go back to not knowing. But now, after the watchers, the glitch, the echo train, the ones who moved, the question waits for me, patient, still, heavy with meaning. And tonight, I've run out of places to hide from it. The train is empty again, silent, not the terrifying silence of punishment, but the quiet of decision, a breath held by the universe itself, waiting to see what it'll choose. There's no attacker this time, no scream, no gray coat, no reflection in the glass, just me, in the space I once failed to fill. The train slows, not stop slows, enough for me to stand. The doors hiss open, and instead of another car, another loop, another version of the same regret, I see a platform. And on that platform stands a single figure, an old woman, hands clasped, eyes kind, expression unreadable. She doesn't speak, but I know she's here to ask it. The question, the question. I step off, feet light, heart heavier. The air on the platform feels different, realer, thicker with truth. It smells like rain on stone, like memory. Like the moment before a child learns the meaning of too late, she doesn't move, just watches me. Not like the watchers. There's no judgment, no hunger, no data collection, just curiosity, like she wants to see if I can finally bear the weight of myself. She lifts her hand, points behind me. I turn. The screen is back, floating in the air, gentle and silent. It shows the subway car. That night, that second, again. Of course, the attacker, the gray coat, the phone in my hand. But this time, there's no audio, only one word, burned into the bottom of the frame like a subtitle from some forgotten god. Why not? Why didn't you help? Not why did you film? Not why were you silent, just why? The root of all pain, the seed of all change. And there it was, carved across my moment like a scar. I stared at the screen, and for the first time I didn't look away, because I knew I had to answer, not to her, not to the watchers, not even to him, but to myself. So I whispered, because I was afraid. The screen flickered, the image slowed. The attacker's movement became syrup. The gray coat's stumble extended across 10 seconds. Time stretched like it was listening. So I continued, because I thought someone else would do something, because I told myself recording it was enough, because I convinced myself I was doing something just by capturing it, because I didn't want to be hurt, because I didn't want to be the one who got blamed, because I thought I was too small to change anything, because I thought I could be both present and uninvolved. Silence. Then the screen changed. Now it was me sitting on my couch that same night. Blank stare, phone in hand, face lit blue, staring, consuming, disappearing into my own passivity. And underneath, a new question. Are you still him? My knees buckled. I dropped to the floor. Because I didn't know. I wanted to say no. I desperately wanted to say no. But the truth was, maybe I still was. Maybe a piece of me still lived in that fear. Still believed that watching pain was a form of courage. Still wanted to be better without doing better. And that's when the woman stepped forward. She knelt beside me, placed a hand warm, solid on my shoulder, and said, then choose. Not a demand, not a threat, just an invitation, a doorway. Because that's all the loop ever really was, a locked room with the key taped to the inside of the door. We just don't turn around. We keep rewatching the failure, replaying the regret, feeding the algorithm, calling it justice, calling it closure, calling it accountability. But it's none of those things. It's delay, it's avoidance, it's self-preservation wearing a mask of awareness. And now I could leave, not because I was forgiven, not because the watchers were done with me, not because the system would stop showing my failure, but because I was ready to carry it without hiding, to carry it forward into the next moment. The next time I hear a scream, the next time someone stumbles, the next time silence dares me to stay silent, and this time I will not. The woman nodded, stood. She didn't disappear, didn't glow, didn't float. She just turned and walked away, because that's how real change happens. Not in spectacle, but in motion, one step at a time, one choice, over and over, until the pattern breaks. I looked back at the screen. It was blank now. No clip, no failure, no question, just a single blinking cursor, like it was waiting for me to write a new ending, or maybe a new beginning. Either way, it was mine now. Are you listening? Really listening? Because this isn't just my question, it's ours. What will you do the next time life puts the moment in your hands? Will you record? Will you retreat? Will you wait for someone else? Or will you move? That's it. That's the only question that matters. Not what went viral, not what trended, not what made headlines, just what did you do when it counted? The system is watching, but more importantly, so are you. Even after everything, the glitch, the mirror, the question there was still one thing I hadn't faced. Not the moment, not the failure, not even the algorithm. No, what remained were the watchers, the ones who were always there, just at the edge of focus, too still, too quiet. They had watched me film, they had watched me freeze, they had watched me loop, and now I was ready to face them. Because if I was ever going to walk free, I needed to know why they stayed, why they followed, why they never intervened, what kind of justice just watched the train slowed. Doors opened, not to a platform, but to a hall, a long, dark corridor lined not with ads, but with mirrors, each one cracked, each one reflecting me, but not just me. Me through the eyes of others, some filled with disgust, some with pity, some with nothing. That was the worst. The ones that looked at me and saw no one, no mistake, no lesson, no redemption, just content. Another clip, a moment consumed, a face watched, then forgotten. I walked. The mirrors whispered as I passed. Not words, breaths, echoes, not judging, not comforting, just acknowledging. Like they had recorded everything and were replaying it back to me, not for punishment, but for remembrance. And then I reached the end of the corridor, a door, unlike any he had seen before. Wood, old, with a brass handle. Above it, carved in slanted letters, to those who witnessed you. I hesitated. My hand hovered, because I knew whatever was on the other side would not be gentle, would not be filtered. This wouldn't be another metaphor, another loop, another lesson dressed as punishment. No, this would be the truth, raw, naked, unchanging. So I opened the door. Inside was a theater, empty, except for one thing, a screen, and beneath the screen, rows of chairs, filled, every seat occupied by them. The watchers, they didn't look up when I entered, didn't turn to greet me, didn't shift in their seats, just watched, silent, eyes locked on the screen. I followed their gaze, and there it was, my moment. Again, the subway, the attacker, The man in the gray coat, me frozen, phone in hand. But this time the angle was new, not from the side, not from reflection. It was from above, from within, from behind my own eyes, as if they were watching not what I did, but what I felt. Every flicker of fear, every excuse, every millisecond of hesitation, all of it projected like film. And they didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't laugh, just watched, like archivists cataloging a species, not with scorn, but with something worse, objectivity. I stepped closer. The nearest figure turned its head, and I saw it was me, not a copy, not a reflection, not a looped version. Me, as someone else, but still me, older, younger, changed. Each watcher in the theater was me, hundreds, thousands, every possible version of who I could have been if I had chosen differently. The man who stepped in, the one who screamed, the one who tackled the attacker, the one who saved a life, the one who got hurt, the one who died trying. They were all here, watching. Their eyes weren't cruel, just full of what I don't know. Memory, maybe, expectation, loss. I sat in the only empty seat, middle row, perfect view, and I watched with them, not the action, but the inward moment, the one no camera had ever seen, the one no viewer ever commented on, the second when I told myself, let someone else be brave. No one spoke. Until one of them, an older version of me, hair silver, eyes clear, turned and asked, do you forgive him? I swallowed. Who, I asked. The one you were, the one you left behind. I looked back at the screen. The man frozen there me looked so small, so scared, so human. And I realized I had never really spoken to him, only judged him, hated him, tried to outgrow him, but I had never said I understand. So I whispered it, to the screen, to the seat, to the scared man inside me. I understand, and then I forgive you. The screen blinked. For the first time it stopped replaying. It held still, frozen on a single frame. Me, mid-breath, before the phone was raised, before the choice was made, the moment before the moment, and it stayed there, like it was waiting for a new ending. The watchers turned back to the screen, together, as one, and I felt it. They weren't my judges. They were my memory, my accountability. Not here to condemn me, but to remind me who I could have been, who I still could be. And I wept, not for shame, not for guilt, but for the weight of being witnessed, to be truly seen, not as a villain, not as a hero, just as someone who failed and kept going. And maybe that was enough. Are you still here? Good, because this chapter wasn't about me. It was about you, because you're being watched, too. Not by cameras, not by strangers, by your own self, the one who knows what you could have done, what you still can, and that self will follow you, not to punish, but to ask, will you move next time? Because one day, you'll walk into your own theater, and the only thing playing will be you. I stood at the edge of the theater. The screen behind me had gone dark. The watchers sat motionless, not because they were waiting for more, but because they had seen enough. There was nothing left to replay, no frame to rewatch, no silence to study. Only one thing remained, the exit. It stood where no door had been before, simple, unmarked, quiet. A soft white light spilled from beneath it, not harsh, not blinding, but warm, like sunrise or forgiveness. I stepped toward it, Not rushed, not afraid, just ready. And as I reached the threshold, I turned back one last time. The theater remained silent, still, watching, not me, not anymore. Watching whoever came next. I pushed open the door and walked into the world. No glitches, no echoes, no looping screens, just reality. People on sidewalks, horn blasts from impatient drivers, children laughing, a dog barking 2 blocks away. It was loud, beautifully loud, alive. And yet, as I stood there truly outside the loop, something felt different. Not in the world, in me. I walked, not aimlessly, but without a destination. My legs moved like they remembered something my mind had only just begun to relearn. Motion is meaning. You don't need to know the outcome before you act. You just need to act. Because sometimes the world doesn't need your certainty. It needs your presence. As I passed a corner store, I heard raised voices, a man shouting, a woman trembling. My old self might have kept walking, might have said, "It's not my business. It's too dangerous. Someone else will handle it." But now I stepped forward, not recklessly, not heroically, just honestly, present. He backed down the moment I spoke. She stepped away. Someone else called the police. A third stranger offered her water. None of us knew each other. None of us filmed. None of us turned away. And in that moment, we broke a loop together. You want a moral? I know, so did I. Some final line of wisdom to stitch it all together, to make the pain feel purposeful, to make the horror feel like it taught us something. But the truth, the lesson is already inside you. It always was. It hides in the seconds before you speak, in the breath before you move, in the choice you don't realize you're making. We talk about evil like it's loud, obvious, sharp, but most of it is quiet, passive, wrapped in good intentions and delayed actions. And it grows when we say, "It's not my job. It's not the right time. I don't know what to do." The world isn't asking you to fix everything. It's just asking you to show up. Sometimes that means standing up. Sometimes it means stepping in. Sometimes it just means not looking away. Not because you'll be a hero, but because you'll be human. And that's all we've ever needed from each other. Not perfection, not bravery beyond fear, just small moments of shared responsibility, of presence, of grace. I still carry the loop with me, not as a curse, not as a punishment, but as a reminder. A scar on the inside of my choices, a compass that only points forward toward the next moment that matters. I don't know when it will come. I don't know if we'll be ready, but I do know this: I will not freeze, not again. And if you've listened this far, if you've carried this story all the way through, then maybe you're carrying something too. Guilt, regret, silence, or maybe just potential. That means the story worked. Because the story was never just about me, it was about you, your screen, your choice, your next moment. The question is no longer, why didn't you act? The question now is, will you? Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.